The main point really in this moment is to get people to reorient, not around how much money do I have. That is a never ending battle. And instead to say, how wealthy am I? What are the ways I define that? Let me recognize that. And what is in that basket, I'm going to define as wealth.
Welcome back to the third part of a 7-part series on the lawyer, attorney, well-being. And today we're going to talk about a topic that maybe I'm a bit biased, but I like talking about finances because I think it is probably a place where so many people struggle and it impacts people's lives in so many different ways. So we're going to talk about the finance factor and the 6 factors of dis-ease. So welcome back, Bill. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thank you, Terrell, for having me again.
Awesome. Now, I'm curious for this finance topic.
Yeah.
At what point in kind of your journey did you come to realize that, hey, you know what? Finance is a big area of dis-ease for
Yeah.
attorneys.
Yeah. I would say for me, it's been actually quite personal. My dad was a doctor. He rode the wave of what I'll call the joyful days of medicine from like 1965 to 95, and where he was able to do great work, make good money, have a vacation home, wasn't a millionaire by any chance, but was in a good shape. My father-in-law, same way as an attorney. And so that was my model on, okay, this is what you do. And it's really interesting. A number of years ago, I could remember even when I had well-paying job that I still don't have a vacation home. So I guess I'm not as good as my dad. Like I needed to do that. And that whole idea of there's not enough, I don't have enough money. What's going to happen when I retire? I went through the second career thing and had 4 kids and I don't have millions in the 401k and just really being obsessed with that. And I think there are 2 things that impacted my thinking a lot. One actually was a number of years ago when I was asked to do a children's sermon in church. And honestly, I don't remember any about what the context was, but I do remember the illustration. I had these 5 or 6 little kids in front of me, and I had this like paper grocery bag. And I reached in and started handing each one this little Snickers. And I was like, oh, do you like that? Yeah, this is great. Church and candy in church. This is like Halloween church. This is great, right? Guys just handing out candy. And then for the last person, I pulled out one of these supersized Snickers and handed it to them. And you know what happened? All the other kids are like, well, how come I didn't get one of those? Like, I just got this little one. And so you see what happened. They were totally satisfied until they saw that other one. And now, it's not enough. And so that's one of the ways we as adults are about things like being rich. Oh, I make 100,000. I thought I was rich. And then I found out Terrell made 200. I'm going to try to make 300. Then so-and-so makes 400. And Bill Gates made millions. And now you have all these other people who are making billions and they're trying to be the richest. And you're like, so here's the point. Being rich is a relative thing that is only in comparison to everybody else. If you have 1 car and you're happy, you're great in your neighborhood till you go to some other neighborhood and everybody has 2 or 3 or whatever, right? And so being rich is a game you will never win. And if that's one of the things that you have built into sort of the fabric of what it means to be you, that is going to be a very hard road. Now, contrast that with being wealthy. So being wealthy is a whole different way of thinking about your life and what you have, if you want to use those terms. And really, this came home to me 4 years ago when actually my mother-in-law had just passed away. This was right before COVID shutdown happened. And one of my father-in-law's friends from many years ago was at the funeral, and we were standing and talking. And at some point, he asked me if I had family and all this. And I began to describe my 4 children, my 6 grandchildren. And he interrupted me at some point, held my shoulders, looked deep in my eyes, and said, Bill, you are a very wealthy man.
Wow.
And that really hit me. And I thought, yeah, whatever the number is in my bank account, all you need is enough for today. And I need to stop thinking of that category by this stacks of Snickers and how big is my Snickers bar, and say, no, I get to define what wealth means. Wealth could mean, hey, I have this little cabin on a farm and we just go and sit there. Do you want to go to Europe? No, I'm content. You're just happy and content in this way. You define things of meaning that then are, now you are a wealthy person, right? And money in the bank could be part of that, but it's not the thing. And so the main point really in this moment is to get people to reorient, not around how much money do I have. That is a never ending battle. And instead to say, how wealthy am I? What are the ways I define that? Let me recognize that. And what is in that basket, I'm going to define as wealth.
I think that so much there. So I want to ask a couple of questions on that. When it came down to I guess the comparison, I see a lot of lawyers have a challenge with that because in some respects, it's like they're using their comparison to other people as maybe like
Yep.
a reference point or a North Star.
Yeah.
Is there any way for them to learn from others without comparing themselves to others?
Oh, boys. Yeah, that's a great question. It's hard because we do live in this culture where people make judgments on appearances. And my father in law was a very successful attorney in Charlotte. And he just used to drive a long time ago, like a Chevrolet or a Buick. And many of his clients would be like, we want you to have a nicer car. You're like, why? I'm just driving from home to the parking deck because people, we want that because that mattered to them, right? That they were using this. And the law firm I worked at, the managing partner was the same way. He like drove this beat up old Jeep. He says, I don't know, I just like this Jeep. So I'm driving it to work. And some of the comments like, can you have a nicer car? We don't want people to. And so it's tricky because those are the waters we swim in. And so I think you have to decide how much can learn from others in a sense of, okay, I have to, if I'm going to be a doctor tomorrow, I have to look like a doctor and act like a doctor. That's true because that's the function I'm playing. But at the same time, how can I not let that define who I am, as we talked about that before, and not be the hub of this idea of that's what I need to show that I am rich. I want everyone to see that, right? I was giving a talk recently and I happened to use an analogy about using one of these really expensive pocketbooks sometimes that people buy. And I'm like, wow, you can get a bag at Target that's just as functional, right? But it's the look of that. And so I think it's hard to struggle with that. You have to be really rock solid in who you are to say, oh, I'm fine, not being flashy and showy and all about money.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point because I talk to so many lawyers all the time. And I remember having a conversation with one lawyer where we were looking through like the finances for their firm. And I was like, hey, telling them what's going on, walking through the numbers. And they were just like, I feel like I should be doing more. And as I asked, I was like, okay, why? So I was at a conference and this person got on stage because they
Yeah.
achieved $4 million in their firm. And
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like, okay, that's great.
Yeah.
And then that's what they were really
Exactly.
defining their attentions around. And I finally
Yes.
stopped and I asked, I was like, okay, what is your goal? If I gave you $4 million today, what would you do with the money? And when they
Uh-huh.
walked through it, we did the math and I'm like, you don't need $4 million to do that.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
and I
that's
think as
great. Yeah.
people started to redefine their
Yeah.
financial goals based on what they really want, I find that most people don't need as much money as they think they do.
Oh, I love that, Terrell. That's awesome because you're regrounding them and pulling them out of this sense that the only metric of life and worthiness is the $4 million. And you're helping redefine that. The other thing I would say about money in particular is the other one of the other words for money is currency. And I always think of that like the current of a river. Currency means it's supposed to move. Right. So if I won the lottery and won the $100 million giant jackpot, and I just built a big old concrete thing in the back and stacked it all up in there, that actually helps nobody. It's no good to me. It's no good to the world. It's just ridiculous. Why? Because it's not moving, right? That needs to move to be helpful. And so when you began to think of money as currency, how is there a current? Where is it flowing? If I do get $4 million, how much of that can actually just flow through me and out to others? Because that then becomes part of how I define wealth, not by how much I have, but by how much I give away, right? How much can I give away to others? Where is the meaning of that? And the funny thing is, people who give away money, and the more they give away, actually, the wealthier they feel. It's interesting. You don't feel wealthy by just hunkering down and saying, man, I got this all in the concrete bunker out back. You feel wealthy by giving it away. The same is true with volunteering your time. If you have really busy people who will stop and volunteer, they're like, yeah, there's actually more time than if all you do is crush it and bill the hours. And so I think all of that rolls in together. And I think that's awesome counseling, coaching, and advice on your end to say, what would you actually do with it? What would life look like? How would it change? And particularly, how would that change your sort of meaning, significance, et cetera, in life? And then regrounding them on, was that why you became a lawyer? Did you become a lawyer because you said, this is a great path to be the richest man in town? For most people, that's not the number one reason.
Yeah.
Now, it's a nice adjunct reason. It's the sidecar on the motorcycle, but it's not the driver. And so, particularly in your role, if you can recenter people on that, why did you even do this? Your family needs are met. So why are you here? What is the purpose of it? That's beautiful, Terrell. That's really good.
Nice. Again, thank you for another amazing part of this series. This is for everyone listening. This is part 3 of a 7-part series. We are going to have more great episodes. So I want to say thank you again, Bill, for coming on to join us for this
Thanks for
part.
having me.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Law Firm and Finance Show, where we give you great content that helps you build a more successful law firm. So make sure you hit that subscribe button on all platforms and follow us for more content.